everyone. This is Pamela Topchian. Welcome to Holistic Connections, Conversations with Holistic Practitioners. And today, my guest is Madhavi, and I will let you introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do in the holistic healing world, please.
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name is Madhavi Parikh, and in my profession, I'm a physician associate now. It used to be physician assistant.
Hmm.
Um, I have been one for some 23, 24 years, and most of it has been in the field of oncology. Um, and over time, I started liking oncology so much because it was offering me a way, it was offering me a glimpse into myself as well with
Hmm.
regards to my approach to life. As I was working with my cancer patients, I was beginning to see patterns, or just I was curious to know why is it that some people do so well? Why is it that some people don't do so well, even if someone has a very poor prognosis based on clinical things like the pathology or the stage at which the cancer is diagnosed versus early stage cancer.
Yeah.
And I was also observing the role of the providers in this space, whether they be physicians or APPs like myself, PAs, nurse practitioners, or nurses, and how we communicated, how we took care of the patients, and what did we bring to the table from a personal standpoint as well, and how all of that was playing out in terms of the care that the person received, and how is it that it played out for my satisfaction in practicing medicine as well.
Yeah.
So with that, I was also bringing in unknowingly initially my cultural background. So I grew up
Mhm.
in India, and it wasn't the easiest of childhoods, but at the
Yeah.
same time, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
And I truly believe that that played a role
Yeah.
in who I am today. So with those negative experiences, but then beginning to see that maybe they were not so negative and learning to trust the universe and shaping out my life the way it needed to be shaped out.
Yeah.
All of that is how I started practicing integrative medicine, along with some training and meditation along the way.
Oh, nice, nice. So you use different integrative therapies and medicine with cancer patients,
I do.
or you introduce them to these different ones so that they can do that on their
I
own, or
introduce them. So, what is integrative therapy or integrative medicine? It can have so many different ways of looking
yeah,
at it, right? It could be somebody who's taking a lot of vitamins and supplements, or it could be somebody who's completely on the alternative track, or
right.
it could be somebody who's combining conventional with complementary and alternative modalities. But at the root of it all, or at the center of it all, is the individual. The
Yeah,
two individuals, or more individuals, the patient as well as the team that is taking care of them. So, and the team and the patient and their caregivers, and then the team that is taking care of them. And how do we approach that patient in what is a holistic, sort of integrated way? So it's not just that the person has cancer and we're looking at the cancer independently of the person. So if the person comes from a more community-based environment versus somebody who's very isolated, somebody who has access to a lot of information versus somebody who is not as educated or doesn't have the resources to gather
yeah,
that information. So to me, that became more of that integrative approach,
yeah.
and then understanding the different modalities that are out there that have medicinal value to it, like
Mm-hmm.
acupuncture, like exercise, like physical therapy, like psychotherapy. It could be any number of things, or even just finding that peace and acceptance within the self that
Oh, yeah.
this is who I am, this is what I have now, and this is how we need to go forward. So that's how I started making it more integrative.
Nice, nice. I love that. I love that. And how do you find that patients respond to you if you start bringing up some of these more alternative or integrative therapies and methods? How do they respond to you normally?
So it depends on how you started it.
Yeah.
For my, like if it's in a manner that it's shoving it down your throat, then they're not going to respond to it well. But if you
Right.
allow the patient to tell their story, I think one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that the family medicine doctors used to do well, or providers used to do well, is know the patient from a personal standpoint, like who was
Right.
their family, what was happening at home, what was happening in their work life, where were the stressors coming from, it kind of getting to know them on a personal basis. So
Sure.
when we give patients that platform that, I know your cancer history, but you tell me, based on the information I have, I know that this is the cancer you have, and but I want you to tell me your story and what brings you to me and how is it that you want to proceed.
Yeah.
So from there, while I'm listening to that story, they're telling me about their medical side of it as well, but I'm also getting a glimpse into their social history, their work history, their stressors, whether they're eating well, sleeping well, whatever it may be, or not exercising, doing too much exercise,
Mm.
relying a lot on Dr. Google to give them their
Right.
information, and now Chat GPT or whatever
Right.
AI sourced information it is. I'm getting insights into that. And through that, I think if we learn to listen properly, then we are also getting an idea as to what they are asking from you. But the other part of it that kind of helped me in this journey was my own development, if I may say, or evolution
Mm-hmm.
of who I am today. Because as I mentioned, I didn't have the easiest of childhoods,
Yeah.
like watched multiple, grew up in India, which was a blessing as well. But at the same time, it was hard. And
Yeah.
then lost my father when I was in my late teens, but I had
Mm.
became the breadwinner of the family.
Oh
I
gosh.
had seen a few other deaths in the family as well,
Mm.
close ones, a lot of injustices, having the way I was raised in a religion known as Jainism, where the emphasis is on non-violence, which means
Mm-hmm.
that you pick up a lot of guilt on you because there's a lot of penance to be done, like if
Uh,
sort of through fasting and all of
yeah.
that. But I was also raised in a Catholic boarding school, so
Mm.
guilt was my skin
Oh
kind
my
of thing.
goodness.
So
Yes.
and that is what I carried on me all the time. So,
Right.
which meant, the bully me,
Mhm.
take advantage of me, do, like I had to get past all of that as well. I
Yeah.
had my own growing up and my own healing to do.
Sure.
So, along the way, I found insight meditation,
Mm.
and that allowed me to really get a glimpse into where I was coming from in my outward behavior.
Yeah.
And so I kind of did the work of listening to myself. And by
Nice.
doing that, I was better able to understand myself and then others.
And then others. Yeah.
So, but first I had to learn to listen to myself. Like,
Sure.
what is it what shapes me? How is it that I'm behaving based on how I think, based on how I respond, based on
Mm-hmm.
how I perceive things? So through that, I was able to observe my patients and then over time also gain the confidence that this is a two-way relationship. They
Yeah.
are vulnerable, but I don't have anything to hide either. So let's
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation. And I can tell them that, look, you are an expert on yourself. I know the medicine part of it to some extent. I don't know it all, but
Yeah.
to some extent, I know the medicine part of it. And this is where you are right, but this is where maybe you're not so right. And maybe
Yeah.
you can look at it differently. So taking away that fear that I had of expressing myself and then helping them to get rid of their fear
Mm-hmm.
is is part of that journey as well.
Yeah, so helping people to look within themselves and to also feel more open and safe to communicate with you and be more vulnerable and
Right,
to, like you said, the whole story, the whole person.
right,
That's what integrative and holistic really means, right?
right,
So,
right.
yeah, and that can mean different things to different people, like you said, for sure. So, I imagine that with some of the patients, part of it is explaining what that means because they
Correct.
might not they might only know the medical world and nothing else. And so they
Right.
might have a lot of questions about what else is out there that they can do. I think that a lot of cancer patients feel lost in their journey and they feel like they only have their doctors to ask questions to who may not know and most likely don't know any of these other methods and modalities and that. So, is there any one thing that you can mention, or maybe even up to three kinds of different methods or integrative therapies or anything that you think are most, I'm not going to say most helpful because it depends on the person for sure, but what do you think people are most open to trying, or what do they have the most questions about when it comes to these different methods and therapies?
I don't know if there is just one. Vitamins and supplements are a big thing in our culture, in our society, just because our diet has a lot to be desired for,
Right.
right? Like, um, and so the one thing is that because we are so scared with mortality in front of our faces, it can be seen as a wake-up call, but we don't see that when we first get the diagnosis. So then people start looking for outward modalities. And it
Right.
could be any number of modalities that people look at, but the easy ones would be like the vitamins and supplements, for
Hmm.
example. And now the trend is also for people to seek more and more alternative and kind of completely deny the conventional way because they think there are lots of cynicism out in the world.
Yeah.
And people think that the pharmaceutical insurance companies are out there to get us. So they don't want to
Yeah.
incorporate that. So they want to explore some of the alternative modalities. But again, it's very different for different people
Yeah.
um,
Very
in what
individual.
they are seeking. Yes, because there is a big group of people who want conventional to be integrated with complementary and alternative
Yeah.
modalities. So they are more middle of the road people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I would think.
Uh,
Um,
But again, I see all kinds, and people think that the more I take, the better it is going to be, not realizing that just because it seems natural doesn't mean, first of all, it's natural, and two, it doesn't mean that it's safe, right? Like too much of a
right.
good thing can also be harmful.
Right, right. Just on a very simple note, but we all hear about drink more water, but too much
Right,
water can kill you.
exactly.
So
Or
you
too much
can,
sun, right? Like
yeah,
don't,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Have you heard of the case, and I believe it's in Australia, of the woman Belle Gibson, who pretended to have cancer, and she completely denied all medical treatment and went only for nutrition and acupuncture and things like that. But it was a complete lie. And I wonder if she has made a difference in cancer treatment in a negative way. A lot of people followed her, and she did completely different integrative and alternative therapies. And I guess you haven't heard of her.
No,
So,
I haven't. I'll have
okay.
to look her up. It's interesting. So
Yeah,
why did she do? What was her motive in doing that?
money and recognition, attention. She was a young woman. She pretended
Was
to
she an
have,
influencer of sorts?
yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
And then
there
she
you go.
came out
Okay.
with an app and a book, and it ended up being all a lie. She never had
Right.
cancer.
Uh-huh.
And people
Uh-huh.
were following her that had cancer who didn't want to. And I thought about it when you said there were people who want to completely deny the medical part of it,
Right.
and
Right.
go with just only these alternative
Alternative. Yeah.
therapies. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And no, I haven't heard of her.
Well,
And
that's
it is
good.
sad that she did that. I hope she benefited from acupuncture and hypnotherapy and anything else that she got. Like at least at a personal level, because those techniques are useful even on a good day, right? But the
Right.
thing with cancer is that it's a twofold thing. Yes,
Yeah,
it is mortality in front of our faces, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be a death sentence.
right.
Right. But we have made it such an emotional disease but there are so many other diseases that can be more fatal, worse in
Yeah.
terms of quality of life. It can do a lot more, it can have a lot more negative impact on our lives. But cancer is one where it can evoke emotions
Yeah.
and support in such a way that no other disease can or
Yeah.
does. And which is a sad thing, because I feel like if we took care of the person and made them healthier, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, kind of thing, then it doesn't matter, because ultimately we are all leaving this earth dead,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's like no one is spared of that. It's a matter of how do we accept it as a part of life. And
Mm-hmm.
life just doesn't mean that you're breathing. Life is so many things, right? Like become a bigger, kinder, better person, learn
Yeah.
to accept things, become more resilient, don't be so frail, and don't expect others to do everything for you.
Right.
Learn to forgive. Like there are so many other things that we can learn from hardships, whatever they may be, financial
Yeah.
hardship, physical health hardships, anything like that.
Yeah.
But we've made this cancer into such a big, like, oh,
Yeah.
poor me kind of
The
thing.
big bad C word.
Yes, and it can
Yeah.
be a wake-up call for me to take stock of my life. How is it that I
Yeah.
got here, and what is it that I need to shed so that I can move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's fascinating, and I love what you said because we're talking about different holistic and alternative methods and modalities, but it might just be more of a reflection within, right? It might be more of something that you need to take stock of your life, like you said, and reflect on how you've been living and how you got here from there.
Right,
So more of
right.
a mindset in that. So I wonder too, since you were born and raised in India, is there a different idea around death, or do you find that like in America we're all so afraid of it that we don't even talk about it half the time? Is it
Yeah.
different there than here?
At least it used to be when I was growing up.
Right.
And I still think it is. But Hindu, like any, not the non-monotheistic religions, that's my understanding. I could be completely wrong. And my exposure is more to Islam and Christianity from India, just by observation and it being a part of the culture. And I can't, but I totally won't speak to that. But in Hinduism, any of the religions that come off of Hinduism, whether it was Buddhism, whether it's Jainism, or any of that, or religions that believe in reincarnation,
Yeah.
it is that like your body is a vessel for the
Hmm.
spirit or
Yeah.
the soul. So we come into each life to become a bigger person. And
Hmm.
so beings like the Buddha or even Jesus in mystical Christianity, or the quote God of Jainism, Mahavir, they were perfect beings who came into life after life after life to evolve into bigger and better human beings until they became the perfect human beings. And
Yeah.
that is what we strive for,
Yeah.
which is the higher self,
Right.
basically, right? So that means that everything is impermanent,
Yeah.
which means that that is death, right?
Right.
Like if
Us too.
this
Yeah.
moment is this moment is never the same as the next well, the
Right.
next moment will never be same as the present moment,
Right.
correct? So
Yeah.
that is death in itself,
Yeah.
correct? So things
Yeah.
that the constant change, so change is the only constant. And so with that constant change, death is inevitable.
Hmm.
And so you accept that, and that if you can accept change as it happens versus trying to control that change, which you can never control, then you are also more resilient, right? Like
Right.
you are not taken back
Scared of what's
by
coming. Yeah.
scared of fear of the unknown is not
Right.
hopefully a thing, but of course it is. But at the
Of course.
same time, like fear doesn't have a place in terms of our day-to-day existence
Hmm.
versus like fear having a role, say, if we were out in the jungle and to the, naked to the elements kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
so in that sense, then their rites and rituals also developed around death. And so the grieving process and grieving, sadness, all those emotions are just as much a part of life. So when we are attached to something, we have to learn to become unattached.
Yeah.
So death, the rituals around death will help us in getting to that point. So in Hinduism, which I did not recognize until I came here and started like looking into life more from a different perspective, is
Yeah.
that we at least a 13-day process of grieving the death, the
Mm.
person who is gone, and then celebrating it with a big community gathering.
Oh, yeah,
But
nice.
the first few days are more about grief, like very heavily grieving,
Mm-hmm.
crying, having the community members come in and sitting with you in mourning and kind of
Yeah.
recalling, reminiscing, all of that. And then slowly you also let go of the belongings. There are rituals where you donate the belongings of the person who passed away
Yeah.
and giving it more to the community so that you're not holding on to it.
Yeah.
We don't come back home with the ashes either. Cremation
Yeah.
happens and you don't come back home with the ashes, but there is a process during cremation as well where the skull is broken so that the flames can get to the brain as well. But
Yeah.
all of that is kind of there to help you let go. At the very end, there is a big community dinner where you are inviting all, just like a marriage, where you invite your
Yeah.
relatives, but you also invite people from the community,
Yeah.
and you see the circle of life there. You know, the kids are running around, everyone,
Right.
they're happy, sort of. And the person who has lost their loved one, they are also coming back into
Mm-hmm.
society, reintegrating.
Ah. Yeah, and you mentioned the children, and so that has to make a big impact on growing up and your life in general around your thoughts around death if you're exposed to it, and this happens
Right,
in your community and within your family, and it's not hidden away. Or a lot of
right.
times with funerals in the United States, we say, I don't know if I should bring the kids.
So yesterday I was at a gathering, and it was like a local network
Hmm.
gathering, and it was just very interesting for me. So there was a funeral
Hmm.
home director who had come to speak to talk
Yeah.
about wills and deciding on your funeral and all of that to
Hmm.
avoid last minute decisions, which
Right,
is
right.
awesome. But one of the questions that came out from the crowd was that I want to be cremated and I want to be scattered over wherever they wanted to be scattered, their
Yeah.
ashes be scattered. Their question was, do I need a place for my loved ones to come and grieve me? That answer from the Western perspective, the answer was a hard yes. Yes, you need someone to come to your grave and grieve you. And versus where how I grew up is like you miss that person, but you don't hold on to the person.
Yeah, their memory is in your heart and in your soul
And
with
you move
you.
on, right? Like just me going to that grave site or
Mm-hmm.
having the ashes at home or whatever, I'm constantly reminded. So I'm constantly evoking those feelings
Hmm.
and those thoughts, and I can't move on.
I
Even
see.
though,
Yeah.
right, like that's the more philosophical but more introspective way of looking at, which
Yeah.
I did not understand before. But we have to form closures, we have to let go, we have to kind of allow ourselves to move on. Otherwise, I'm going to be unhappy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? If I'm constantly remembering someone I lost, I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do.
Yeah. It'll always feel like a loss rather than a
Correct.
part of your life. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see
We hold
that.
ourselves back from the joy that that
Mm-hmm.
person brought in our lives as well.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. I know quite a few people that seem like they're in mourning forever.
Correct.
You might need some sort of grief counseling or other types of
Reminders.
therapies. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
help with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
But yeah, so putting that death part of it into cancer as well,
Yeah.
like when I'm talking from the beginning, so that regardless of the outcome, we are more accepting of the outcome
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
more prepared.
Yeah, and that is a big part of the worry for people, right? People with cancer, that's the biggest thing on their mind.
Right.
Even though,
Right.
like you mentioned, I don't think that cancer is like the number one cause of death. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's like heart disease or something. But
Yeah.
um, but still, that's the thing that we think of right away when we get that diagnosis. So yeah.
Correct. Correct.
So that's great. Great that there's people like you out there doing what you're doing and educating the public. So is there anything else that you would like to share or make sure that people know before we go, as well as where people can reach you if they have any questions or would like any more information?
No, just don't be afraid. Be kind to yourself. Learn acceptance. of the self as much as of others, but we start with ourselves, and that
Yeah.
starts with kindness as well. Fear, it has no place for the most part. If we have a roof over our heads, we are kind of safe overall.
Yeah.
But yeah, just, you don't have to be so afraid. Give yourself that space and kindness and acceptance to become more resilient. If they want to find me, my email is ISPIE at ispiehealth.com. And the ISPIE is integrative, spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional health,
Oh,
which
nice.
is the four quadrants of our body, which when in synchrony, we are at our best. We are in harmony with ourselves.
Nice.
So it's iSpy at ispiehealth.com, or they can call me or text me at 980-224-0094,
Okay.
and I will get back to you um,
Okay, great. Great.
once I get that message.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll have that information in the show notes and in the description box and everything. But yeah, so make sure you look there for any listeners and watchers, since this is on YouTube and now on podcast platforms. So I want to thank you so, so much. I
Thank
can't
you.
express my gratitude enough. You've been a wonderful guest, and I'm sure that the listeners and watchers have learned a lot and have a different perspective. And again, thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.